صلاة الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. جزاكم خير for joining tonight and being part of this process of spreading ilm inshallah ta'ala. Um, so um, there's three things I want to mention first. They are very big topics, but I'm just going to try and go through them very quickly. Um, and then we're going to go on to this issue of Tarawih itself. So the point of Ramadan obviously is worship and personal change. It is not whether we should pray 20 or 8 rak'ahs. In fact, that's one of the least important things in your life ever. So you say, why did I sign up for this class then? Why on earth are you giving this talk? I'm talking to a group of people. I'm not talking to people in general. For most people in the world, most Muslims, whether it's 20 or 8 rak'ahs, is totally irrelevant. They have way, way, way bigger problems to deal with and way more other things. So we as well, sometimes religious people, may Allah protect us from labeling ourselves as religious people, we lose focus and we totally mess up thinking that, because we don't know what the point of Ramadan is. So the point is worship and personal change. If we are not better people at the end of Ramadan, then may Allah protect us. So Ramadan is not a time of debate. The last talk, for example, was an issue of debate. When is Ramadan? I intentionally did it well before Ramadan. This debate as well, which is going to come up in Ramadan, I'm doing it now so that we don't debate during Ramadan. If anybody comes and asks me, or anybody wants to say anything, I'll say I've already done a whole talk on it. Go and listen to it. If you don't have the time and the energy to do that, and you just want to argue, then um, go away, frankly. Um, So, key concept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, He says, the unchanging truth is from your Lord, the haqq. So do not be of those who argue. Every single person has his own directions that he is heading in. So race ahead to do good deeds. Just do what you're going to do, brother, sister. Don't sit there and argue and debate because it's not very useful. Imam al-Awza'i, he said, it has reached me, presumably from a hadith, maybe from the Jews and the Christians, maybe from some of the early Muslims, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends ill for a people, He makes them engage in debate and stops them from doing any good deeds. So you sat there for half an hour saying, is it 8 or 20? And you ended up doing nothing. Fairly useless, right? Keep knowledge in a particular angle of your life through a particular mode. Don't discuss with people who aren't intelligent enough to listen or to read. Don't debate with people who just want to argue. It's just not useful. Just say I pray 20 and share this recording, or I pray 8 and share another recording, and say I don't actually want to talk about anything else right now. I just want to pray. It's very important. Talk, 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 and no action. So another thing then is silence. The nafs, one of the things the nafs likes is talking, right? That's why I talk so much. That's why my job is talking, because I'm a very nafsanic person. And so people like to talk, and people don't like to be silent. It's the people don't be like you can letting people talk is a good way to make them feel good, even if you don't do anything about what they're saying, right? Just letting people talk. So people love to talk. The problem is there's certain things we shouldn't talk about, and that's deen. We shouldn't talk about deen unless we know what we're saying and unless it's obligatory. Like if it's not obligatory for you to say what you're saying, don't say this is sunnah, this is wajib, this is anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but if you see any of the people say, this is quoting Surah Maryam, seeing the people say, I have vowed silence. Inni nadartu lirrahmani sawma. I've made a psalm. I vowed to not speak. So I'm not talking to anyone today. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever doesn't leave off lying words and lying deeds, Allah doesn't need him to leave his food and drink, i.e., it won't even count for you anyway. So part of lying words and lying deeds is argumentation and talk while you're fasting. You're having discussion, is it 8 or is it 20 while you're fasting, and you don't know what you're talking about. So don't talk. Right? Only a specialist should be talking about something that requires specialization.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question?
It's gonna hit me. Go ahead, Shem.
Assalamu alaikum. This is, would you also say then that if someone is to engage in this kind of useless speech, it actually can diminish the fast?
Exactly, 100%. So this person is either speaking without knowledge, which is haram, or is speaking in a way that makes the other person do haram. Maybe you're cool, calm, and collected, but you realize that actually most people is either not relevant, it's disturbing, or it's not helpful. So this person gets disturbed by debate. The fact that the ummah has more than one opinion disturbs them. They don't have the religiosity or the the acumen to even process what that means. So it's not useful. So you just kind of get away from it because it's not a useful discussion. They're like, "Hey, do you pray 28?" And they're like, "Brother, let's just pray as much as we can, you know." So you engaged somebody and harmed them. For most people, they shouldn't be engaged in any of these discussions. So they should just remain absolutely silent, not talk as much as possible. And Ibn Khuzaymah narrates from the Prophet ﷺ that he said in Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, fasting isn't avoiding food and drink. Fasting is avoiding stupid and foul speech. So foul speech, of course, we're avoiding foul speech, but stupid speech, this is laghu, this is wrong. Like, you shouldn't talk about these people. Like, you shouldn't be talking. So talking about halal haram when you're not talking to a mufti, you're not. It's not an ilmi setting. It's not a useful setting at all. It's just not useful. Jabir ibn Abdullah quoting himself, these are his words, right? He said, when you fast, that your ears, eyes, and tongue fast from lying and the illicit. Leave off harming your neighbor and adopt dignity and tranquility when you are fasting. And don't let it be the same as if you were not fasting. So you should be in the zone, right? I imagine, for example, let's think about someone who's in the zone. Okay, what does that mean? Your whole family has just died. Are you going to debate 20 or 8 rakats? No, but it might be obligatory. Okay. So what if I have to give this class? My whole family has died. Like I'm totally emotionally absorbed in something else. How am I going to behave? Right? So suddenly, a lot of decisions which are very egotistic and worldly and stupid, they suddenly fizzle away. And now you're thinking, well, I have to pray. I have to do this. I have to do that. But there's no nafs in it. So if you can have a discussion without any nafs in it, and the person you're talking to has no nafs in it, great. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just two egos having an arm wrestle, wasting time and breaking their spiritual fast. It's pointless. And the Prophet ﷺ said, as narrated by Ibn Khuzaymah as well in Sahih, how many a fasting person gets nothing from his fast save hunger and thirst because they didn't adopt the mindset, the way in which you should be, right, when you're fasting. And Ayyub as-Sakhtiyani, he said, in the Salaf, he said, the boldest to answer fiqh questions are those who have the least understanding of differences between the scholars. So somebody says 8 and 20, and someone's saying this, someone's saying that, just don't talk. Those who answer the least questions are those who understand the differences between the scholars the best. Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Layla, one of the great scholars with whom Imam Abu Hanifa used to have debates, he says, I swear that I have met in this very mosque 120 of the Ansar, of the Sahaba, and not a single one of them would ever narrate a hadith, save that he would have rather his companion narrate it instead. So he knew it, but he didn't want to say it. He did not have microphone fever. He wanted to be the last person to say anything. I don't exist, don't look at me. Nor did a single one of them ever answer a question, save that he would rather his companion answer it instead. So this is a key concept. Microphone fever. You want to talk, don't talk. Somebody asks you, say, oh, I'm sure there's some scholars online that have discussed it. I don't know. And they're like, can you show me somewhere? Okay, fine. Here's a link. Here's some here's some scholars, inshallah. But the link you shared with me to somebody who disagrees with me, okay, khair, inshallah. That's good. You've done your obligation, that's all. So be the last person to speak. So don't speak about halal and haram or even sunnah. Say, brother, it's sunnah. Your friend's next to you and he's going to eat something else. He's going to eat. You should say it's sunnah to break your fast and dates, you know? Don't even say that. Unless it's obligatory. If it's your own kids, tell your own kids, do this. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. You're not obliged to. Don't do it. Don't put yourself in a scenario where you're signing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you're not a specialist. Don't do it. Right? A mufti is in that situation. Yes or no? Halal, haram. He's put between a rock and a hard place because Allah put him between a rock and a place. Allah hasn't put you between a rock and a hard place. So don't go there. There's no need to do that. And you're just playing with fire. Right? Don't do it. May Allah protect us all. Pluralism. Again, many people, they don't have the acumen to understand that. They don't have the ego doesn't accept it. They don't believe in pluralism because they're not pluralistic. They are right? And whatever they've understood is right, and they can't understand that there's things that they can't understand, right? Because they have a pride issue and a mental, an intelligence issue. So Abu Darda, great Sahabi, he said, you will never not really understand fiqh until you see multiple ways the Quran can be understood. There's more than one way to understand the deen, right? Or wrong? And they're like, yeah, okay, do you think there's more than one way to understand this whole issue of Tarawih? Yes. Okay. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he says, I do not wish that the Sahaba, the companions of the Messenger of Allah, never disagreed. Because if there were just one opinion, people would be in a difficult situation. Rather, they are all scholars whom we may follow. So whoever follows any of them is still in the right. Alhamdulillah, you follow who you want to follow, that's fine. Alhamdulillah. If he's sa'a, he's still, there's room, there's breadth for all of these opinions. Qasim ibn Muhammad, this is the grandson of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr. One of his students said, I asked Qasim Muhammad about reciting behind the Imam when the Imam prays. So should I recite behind the Imam? Should I not recite behind the Imam? What do I do? Do you have to do the Fatiha? Do I not have to do the Fatiha? He said, if you recite the Fatiha behind the Imam, then know that many followable predecessors, the Salaf, did so too. And you are following the Sunnah. And if you do not recite behind the Imam, you just listen, then know that many followable predecessors did not do so either. And you are following the Sunnah. Notice he uses the word Sunnah for both. There's more than one way. Sunnah is both. That said, Ibn Umar didn't use to recite behind the Imam. So he says, I'm adopting an opinion, right? He is adopting opinion. There is a rajih, there is a stronger opinion in his mind. But both opinions are legitimate. Totally fine. This is Sunnah and this is Sunnah, but I prefer this. Okay. So more than one valid answer. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَاعْتَسِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, and hold tight the rope of Allah and do not become divided. What does that mean? It means this. So how do you put it together? Like, we're supposed to have the same opinion, aren't we? Allah says, don't be divided. Don't have Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, this, that, right? That's what it says. Don't become divided. So how do we marry the prohibition of division with the acceptance of differences? How do we do that? It's very simple. Sectarianism is what? We're right and they are wrong. It is 8 and they're wrong that it's 20. It is 20 and they are wrong that it's 8. Right? So if somebody came up to me and he said, I pray 8, I pray 20, and they said, in Allah's eyes, I know that it is 20, I say you're at 4, you're ignorant. You're ignorant. Because you don't know that. Nobody knows how many rak'ahs we should be praying. You may think that you should pray 20, or you may think that we should pray 8, but you don't know that. Yeah, I know, it's a hadith. Here we go. So you don't know what a hadith is, and you don't know what language is. And say, yeah, well, it's a hadith to this, it's in Bukhari. And say, I know, I'm going to quote it in a second. But you don't understand what you're playing with. Right? So sectarianism is, I'm right and you're wrong. That's sectarianism. It is not that we have to agree. It's totally fine to disagree with somebody. The issue is that you're sectarian when you see that person as absolutely wrong and you as absolutely right when they are not absolutely wrong. So there is room for them to be right. and you're saying they're wrong 100%. That's pride, and that is ignorance, right? You don't actually know that. But you ask this person, do you know what you know? And do you know why you know what you know what you know? The answer could say, why are you getting philosophical with me? I say, Habibi, you need to start thinking. All right. Tomorrow morning, put it in your diary, start thinking today. Because if you don't know what you know or why you know what you know, you have a problem. You have a problem. The madhahib, the schools of thought they say, this is my opinion, and we think it's right, but we might be wrong. And that's your opinion, and we think it's wrong, but you might be right. And what is a madhab then? We look at the Shafi school, Maliki school, any of these schools. This is a multi-generational. So don't quote a hadith as if it's never been discussed before. We've looked at that hadith 50,000 times. And research into the Quran and Sunnah. Don't tell me that I'm not from the Quran and Sunnah. Every single madhab is from the Quran and Sunnah. With a clear methodology, very clear methodology, very sharp, very refined methodology. I'd like to see your methodology. I'd like to see how many multi-generational organizations have come to your conclusion. And we'll see that in a second. The fatwa of an individual, but Sheikh so-and-so says this, it is not multi-generational, nor does it have a clear methodology. But it is, granted, research in the Quran and Sunnah. At the end of the day, the person looked at the Quran and Sunnah. May Allah reward them and increase them. But it's not multi-generational. Therefore, it's very fallible. And it does not have a clear methodology. Therefore, it is by nature fallible. It is wrong by the fact of what it is. Right? I'm doing a research. I'm doing my master's thesis under Dr. Sham, and he's like, Fareed, like you need that I need to see the what's your research, what you need to do a whole module in research methodology, because you're just like going like you don't have a research process. You don't have a clear methodology. I say, no, I've got a really good point to say. That's true. But you're doing, this is a master's paper. I mean, you should have done this in your undergrad anyway. But anyway, this is your master's paper. This is your thesis. You need to do, there's a process. This is what a research it does. What is your process? So it's a very key thing to understand. And it doesn't even matter who this individual is. He could be saying Umar, for crying out loud. Right? I can tell you right now, for example, mistakes that, or at least a mistake that Sayyidina Umar made, because Sayyidina Umar is not multi-generational, whereas the Ummah is multi-generational, and the Madhahib are multi-generational. And if you don't know what multi-generational means, again, what should you do? It's okay. You don't need to know what multi-generational is, as long as you have the humility to what? Don't speak. Aha. I realize that I don't know things, so I should be silent. I realize that people use words that I don't understand. That is fine. Knowing big words does not make you close to Allah or distant from Allah. But if you don't understand certain terms, you don't understand what a Sahih Hadith is, or you don't understand, for example, terms in all sort of fiqh, you don't understand how language works, you have a right to remain silent. That's your wajib. That's Allah's put you in a situation, I don't know, so therefore I shouldn't have an opinion, I shouldn't talk. That's the haqq that's on somebody who doesn't have something, right? You don't have the money to buy this toy, therefore you have the right not to buy that toy. That's the situation Allah's put you in. So it's very important to understand that some people get annoyed and they keep talking. It's like, that's a pride now. There's an issue of pride. It's like, if you don't know, then don't talk. Okay, so Tarawih then. Be silent about Tarawih, don't talk. Do what you're going to do. I'm not going to pray Tarawih anyway. I think it's not the focus of the Ummah. We should be focused on saving money, raising money for Gaza and orphans. Okay, Bismillah, go and do it. Go and do it. Don't object and don't argue. Just be fly on the wall. Right, that's what we need to do. So heritage. So we are heirs of a heritage. We are living in the year, 140, whatever, 14 something, whatever it is. 1,400 years after the Prophet ﷺ, the Ummah has not been sitting around doing nothing. Rather, they've done a lot. They've been looking at the Quran and Sunnah for a long time. And so many people have a negative view of our history, right? A self-hate, right? They look at the ummah as if the ummah today is bad and it's always been bad, and we don't have, and so we have to revisit the Quran and Sunnah because our forefathers have let us down. And I'm sure, Dr. Sham, for example, could have a lot to say about that, working with refugees and these kind of things. The deep sense of Muslims that I've been let down by my by the ummah, that this nation of Muslims has let me down. So therefore I don't trust them. So therefore a revisionist approach is very much welcome, because I don't look at it as something that is good at all. And so that's not the case. That's not the case, right? So the sifting through the studying of the Quran and Sunnah, sifting through the Quran and Sunnah and organizing these things has been done for a long time. So here Ibn Qutayba, the 3rd century scholar, he mentions in his book Al-Imama wa Siyasa, he says that the Khalifa Mansur, he said to Imam Malik, he said, "Oh Abu Abdullah, Imam Malik, codify the sacred law and record it in books. Avoid the strict opinions of Abdullah ibn Umar and the loose opinions of Abdullah ibn Abbas and the fringe opinions of Abdullah Mas'ud, and seek out the median, that which scholars of the Sahaba have agreed upon." And so this is exactly what we see the four madhahibs are. The four madhahib are a codified understanding of the Quran and Sunnah through the eyes of the early Muslims, and avoiding fringe opinions and avoiding very strict things and very loose things, and getting a nice median picture. And one of the things that the madhahib did, or the pre-madhahib, as those of you listen to my lectures in the past, the proto-madhabs did, is cut out fringe opinions. There's a the vote's out on something, the jury's out on something, and there's a vote. 90% says A, 10% says B. B gets cut out. Next discussion. 80% says A, 20% says B, cut out B. This self-filtering process, cutting out weaker opinions, i.e. opinions that are fringe, is a key process that happened at the time of the Sahaba, Tabi'een, and the Tabi'een, etc. There was a debate, for example, concerning the debate over inheritance of the grandfather. What do we do when somebody dies, leaving behind brothers and grandparents, but no father and no son? How does it work? Right? It was an issue of debate. So Umar ibn al-Aziz, he said, follow that which the scholars have agreed upon. He's seeing that there's a debate, and he says, go with the majority. Right? Al-Awza'i, he said, he who follows fringe opinions leaves Islam. You will always find fringe opinions. Some scholars saying something, it's very logical. It's not illogical, but 95% of the ummah doesn't say that. And then you realize, hang on a minute, there was an error. Later on, we realize there's an error in it. And so this is how we always have to look at what is the majority vote. Look at what is a well-known majority vote, and that's what you're going to find the four madhahibs adopting. Sulaiman at-Taymi, he said, if you were to follow the dispensations of each and every scholar, you would gather together inside yourself all evil. So you take this weird position from here and that weird position. These are all valid positions, included in principle in the pluralistic view that we've just sketched out, but have been cut out by the self-editing process of the ummah. That one of these things that in the ummah is cutting out from itself fringe opinions, right? Key concept that we see from the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, cutting out fringe opinions. And Ibn Khaldun in his Muqaddimah, he talks about, this is an 8th century, father of anthropology and a scholar of Islam. He said these marketplaces. What does that mean, these marketplaces? Meaning people have been asking the question, like you and I, is it 8 rak'ahs or 20 rak'ahs, for the last 1,400 years. There is a demand, just like there is in a marketplace. And there is a supply, a good answer. And so people have been demanding answers and getting answers, and demanding answers and getting answers in respect to every single discussion about the deen for a long time. And so these marketplaces have not been barren and empty and fruitless, but rather they have thrived. The marketplaces of these religious disciplines have thrived in this religious community in an unsurpassable manner, meaning the question of anything in fiqh, be it 8 rakats or 2 rakats, be it, does this break my fast, does it not break my fast, is this sunnah, is it not sunnah, is done and dusted. Not last year, not the year before that, but a good 900, 800, 700 years ago. Done and dusted. Scholarly discernments have reached a level that cannot be exceeded. Nomenclatures have been refined, the terms, and what does this mean, what does this not mean? And disciplines have been arranged with a beauty that cannot be outdone. Every discipline, halal, haram, fiqh, aqidah, tajweed, has its authorities and nomenclatures of instruction. So you come and ask me, is this halal? And I say, these are the books, this is what it means, this is the answer. And you're like, but, and you're saying, but why are you challenging it? Because you don't understand that there's a pluralistic view. You don't realize more than one opinion. You don't understand that these marketplaces of these religious disciplines have thrived, i.e., this has been done to death. This discussion has already been debated. It's already there. You are adding nothing by quoting a hadith or a verse or explaining something. You're adding nothing. So I've mentioned this before. This discussion today is actually a total waste of time. It's a total waste of time. Why? Because it's like somebody who doesn't believe in the earth, and then you have to spend 50 years telling them that the earth does exist. What a waste of time. Right? Inshallah, may Allah reward me for my intention that I'm trying to fulfill, trying to correct an error. But it's a waste of time. Because if people understood this paragraph, they wouldn't be here. You say, what are the authorities? These are books 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what it is. Done. Okay, here's the book. Here's the answer. Done. Move on. But we're dealing with people who have a psychological and civilizational problem with the ummah itself. We have an autoimmune disease. We hate ourselves, and we don't trust ourselves. And when we quote ourselves, that we quote ourselves with cynicism and doubt and lack of trust and assumed ignorance, right? So that's all today's class is all about, really, just stating the obvious. So we have traditionalists, people who follow tradition, like myself or like my style, the way I teach, is Quran and Sunnah has been understood correctly, and the 4 schools of fiqh do represent the Quran and Sunnah. Revisionist thing is Quran and Sunnah have not been understood properly and need to be reviewed. The 4 schools of fiqh are unfinished works that need to be revised. Like there haven't been enough scholars, right? There haven't been enough scholars, right? And so, some of it is ignorance, meaning they just don't know things. Some of it is arrogance, right? And other things is generally shayateen messing with their minds and thoughts. It is a real thing, right? Because the more we hate ourselves, the easier targets we are, right? If you don't trust your parents, then the child are not easier targets. So it's a key thing. Make sure that kids don't trust their parents. It's a key. That's a goal of certain, satanic, systems in the modern world. So Tarawih. You ask the question, is it 20? So here we go. Here's the answer. It's 20 rakats. Here's the book. Done. No question. But now we have to go back and say, well, why is that the case? So in Sahih Bukhari, we know this hadith. And so again, what a useless use of energy to quote a hadith that we all know is the Prophet ﷺ did not pray more than 11 rak'ahs in Ramadan or any other month. And so the obvious Dr. Watson approach is, I follow the Quran and I follow the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ did not pray more than 11 rak'ahs in Ramadan or any other month. Therefore, I should not pray more than 11 rak'ahs in any other month. I now need to find out what that means, and I'll find out pretty quickly that it means 8 rak'ahs of tahajjud and 3 rak'ahs of witr. So therefore, that is 11 rak'ahs. I'm going to do that in Ramadan and any other Ramadan, outside Ramadan. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ did not do that. Is that a sound logic? Sound logic. The problem is you haven't seen the rest of the slides, right? Or the person hasn't seen the rest of the tradition, or they've looked at it in a very interesting way, or I don't know quite how these things work. I don't, after seeing, inshallah, after seeing what you've seen today, I don't really see how anybody can look at it any other way. I respect that people can look at it another way, but I find it very difficult to see it in any other way. So, the Kitab al-Athar by Qadi Abu Yusuf. So he was the Chief Justice of the Abbasid Empire, right? The Abbasids at their golden period. He was the Chief Justice, and this is a student of Imam Abu Hanifa. So he narrates from his teacher's teacher, I guess, Ibrahim al-Nakhai, who was the greatest muftis of the Tabi'een, and he met Aisha radiallahu anha and used to give fatwa to Sahaba, right? So this is a great, huge mufti of the time of the Salaf. He said they used to pray 5 sets of 4 cycles of prayer, right? Which means how many rakahs?
20.
20. And who's they? We're talking about the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. They used to pray 20 rakahs. Okay, fantastic. Imam Malik, he narrates in the Muwatta that Umar ibn al-Khattab ordered Ubay ibn Ka'b and Tamim al-Dami to lead people for 11 cycles of prayer. So that's a bit confusing. That's the opposite of what we just saw. So this quote here confirms the hadith that we just saw, and it's also in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Right? And we're going to see another quote like this later on. So what I would like everybody to do is just have a piece of paper or whatever it is. Every single time you see a quote that says 8 rakahs, so 11 means 8 because 8 rakahs of Tarawih and then 3, write it down. Okay? So you saw a slide. The outward purport, the most obvious conclusion from slide 39 is that we should pray 8 rakahs of Tarawih. This one would assume otherwise because say they, meaning the Sahaba and Tabi'een, pray 20. So it's a bit confusing. Here, this one says 11. Imam Malik also narrates that the people used to pray 21 cycles of prayer in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, which seems to go against the previous thing. This mentions 21. Nafi', as narrated in Fath al-Bari, and this is also in other books, he says, I have only ever seen people praying 39 cycles of prayer. Who is Nafi'? Nafi' is the freed slave of Ibn Umar, right? He is one of the greatest, most important teachers of Imam Malik, and he's kind of like one of the greatest heirs of the knowledge of Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar. So this is a tabi'i saying, I only know people, meaning the Sahaba and the tabi'een. I only know, in Medina specifically, I have only known people praying 39 rakahs. That's all I know, which is not 8. Imam Malik is also quoted by Ibn Hajar in Fath al-Bari. He says 39 cycles of prayer. That is what people have been doing for over 100 years. So Imam Malik is born in, so he died in 179, right, Hijrah. So I think he's born in like 95 or something like that. So anyway, imagine you're with Imam Malik and he is, I don't know, 10 years before his death. So it is the mid 2nd century. It's the year maybe 160. Okay, so i.e. since the time of 60, he says people have been praying in Medina 39 rakats. That's what people do in Medina. In the Musannaf of Abdul Razzaq San'ani, this is the teacher of Imam Ahmad. Okay, so this is a large work, 11 volume work, quoting hadith and fatwa of the Sahaba and Tabi'een. Right, Abdul Razzaq San'ani. He said, Umar gathered everyone. Sorry, this typo's here. I finished it. It's like 5 minutes just before. I've been working on it all day, but it's a lot of quotes and took a long time to translate. So the Umar gathered everyone behind Ubay ibn Ka'b and Tamim al-Dari. They would pray 21 cycles of prayer, each cycle about 100 verses. They would finish a little before Fajr. Right? So if we have a picture of a verse, let's make a verse a line. I think that's not really fair, but like let's make a verse is a line and a half, okay? And each page of the Saudi Mus'haf has 15 lines. That makes 10 pages. Right? So they did 10 pages. That's half of a juz. Right? They do half a juz in each rak'ah. Hassan al-Basri, he said they used to pray 39 or 41 cycles of prayer. So this is Hassan al-Basri in Basra. He obviously traveled around, but this is one of the tabi'in. As-Sa'ib ibn Yazid, one of the tabi'in, he said the prayer during the time of Sayyidina Umar was 23 cycles of prayer. So 20 plus 3 witr. Sa'id ibn Jubair, so this is the student of Ibn Abbas, Meccan, right? He used to lead us in Ramadan. He used to pray 5 times 4 cycles. So so the word Tarawih does not come in a hadith. So the word Tarawih is used by the Salaf. So they say khams tarawihat, right? Khamsatu tarawihat, right? 5 breaks. So the idea is that you pray 4 rak'ahs or two rak'ahs, and then you have a break. And then you pray two, and then 2, and then you have a break. So that's what tarawih means. Tarawih means breaks. So it's a word that does not come in the Quran, does not come in the Hadith. The word tarawih is a term that is invented by the Salaf. Right? So he prayed 5 tarawihas. Right? He prayed 5 of them. So that's 20. And then the last 10 days he used to pray 6 of them. So he used to pray 24 rak'ahs. Shutayr ibn Shakal used to pray 20 cycles of prayer in Ramadan along with witr. So this is now moving on to the Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba. Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba is a later work. It's Ibn Abi Shayba is one of the teachers of Imam Muslim, right? So you have the period of Imam Malik. After that, the period of Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad. After that, the period of the author of the 6 books. So Ibn Abi Shayba, this is of the period of Imam Ahmad, of Imam Shafi'i, that kind of era, right? So this name Ibn Abi Shayba is you find it all the time in Sahih Muslim because he's the teacher of Imam Muslim, right? So he has this large work. It was printed when I was early on when I was in Jordan, maybe 2008 or something like that, in 24 volumes, right? It's printed in 24 volumes. So it's for hadiths and fatawa, sahaba and tabi'in, right? So well-known book. This is not some book that I pulled out my pocket. This is a well-known international book, right? So Shutayr ibn Shakal used to pray 20 cycles of prayer in Ramadan along with witr. Sayyidina Ali ordered a man to lead them in prayer during Ramadan, praying 20 rak'ahs of prayer. Sayyidina Umar ordered a man to lead them in 20 cycles of prayer. Ibn Abi Mulaika, this was the Imam of Mecca. Right, this is the Imam of Mecca, of the Tabi'een. He used to lead us in Ramadan praying 20 rak'ahs of prayer. Ubay ibn Ka'b, Sahabi, used to pray 20 cycles of prayer in Medina, and he used to pray 3 cycles of prayer in witr. Al-Harith, one of the Tabi'een, used to lead people in 20 cycles of prayer during Ramadan and then 3 cycles of prayer in witr. Abu al-Bakhtari, one of the Tabi'een, used to pray 5 times 4 cycles, so 5 sets of 4. So again, did he pray 4, like literally 4 with 1 taslim, right? And you see them asking questions like that. Some of the Salaf, like, it's not really clear. The Hanafis, I'll find, I don't know if they still do that in Turkey, but the a position in the Hanafi school is it is literally 5 times 4 rak'ahs. Like you do pray 4 in a row with one salams, right? But the Jumhur, majority of ulama, they say it's no, you pray 2 rak'ahs and the 2 rak'ahs. You pray 2 rak'ahs, give salam, get up, pray 2 rak'ahs, and then you have a break, right? So Abu al-Bakhtari used to pray 5 times 4 cycles of prayer in Ramadan and then 3 cycles of prayer for witr. Abdurrahman ibn al-Aswad, so Ibn al-Aswad, this is one of the Kufans. He used to lead us in 40 cycles of prayer in Ramadan and 7 cycles of prayer of witr. So he's praying 40, total of 47, but he's praying 40 rak'ahs, right? Like he's praying 10 tarawihas, not 5. Ata ibn Rabah, this is one of the greatest students of Ibn Abbas in Mecca. So what's happening in Mecca? It says people used to pray 20 rak'ahs, cycles of prayer and 3 cycles of witr. in Medina during the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the great Khalifa, and Aban ibn Uthman. So this is Aban, the son of Uthman ibn Affan, right? The son of Sayyidina Uthman. They used to pray 36 rak'ahs of prayer and 3 for witr. Ali ibn Rabi'a, one of the tabi'een, used to lead them in Ramadan with 5 times 4 cycles of prayer, i.e. 20 rak'ahs, and then 3 for witr. Sa'id ibn Jubair, one of the students of Ibn Abbas, so he's representing the Mecca, used to lead us in prayer in Ramadan. He would pray 6 times 4 cycles, so 24 rak'ahs he would pray of Tarawih, and then 28 rak'ahs of Tarawih in the last 10 days when he would perform i'tikaf. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is quoted by Ibn Abi Shayba and Imam Bayhaqi in his Kubra that he used to pray 20 cycles of prayer in Ramadan along with witr. And Imam Bayhaqi, he tells us that this is weak. So this hadith is not needed at all. Right? This hadith is not needed. This hadith is weak. And not only weak, it goes against the other hadith which mentions the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying only 8. Umar gathered everyone behind Ubay ibn Ka'b and Tamim Dani praying 11/21. So there's different narrations here. Here's a problem. We already saw that in the beginning, remember? That Imam Malik narrates 2 things, 11 or 21. So there's some mistake in the record. Right? So what does that mean then? It means when we say 8, and we said we only had 2 quotes so far, right? I think 2. One of them is actually, there's contradictory evidence in it. There's different versions of the same report come in different ways. So we can almost cancel that out. Right? We could add it if you wanted to, add it to 3 hadiths or 3 quotes that support the idea of 8, but there's not really that much. The other narration mentions 21 cycles of prayer. So this book here, Mukhtasar Qiyam al-Layl. This is Muhammad ibn Nasr al-Marwazi, one of the mujtahid imams of the Shafi school. He has a book of hadith where he has 2 books, where one book on witr and one book on Qiyam al-Layl. Right? And we don't have the books, but we have summaries of the books. The summary of it written by al-Maqrizi, I think. One of the the book hasn't reached us, I think, but we have all the content of it. It says, during the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab, people used to pray 20 cycles of prayer, extending the recital in each cycle, and they used to pray 3 cycles of witr. Wahab ibn Kaysan, one of the early Muslims, not one of the tabi'een, he said, in Ramadan, people have always prayed 36 cycles of prayer and 3 for witr, and they still do that today. All right, presumably, this seems like it's in Wahab ibn Kaysan. I believe he is in Medina. So Medina is known for their praying the 36 rak'ahs. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud Kufan used to lead us in Ramadan and finish well before dawn. He wouldn't lead all the way till Fajr. He used to pray 20 rak'ahs of prayer and then 3 cycles of witr. And Abdullah ibn Qais, one of the key students of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, used to lead them in Ramadan. He used to pray 20 cycles of prayer and then 3 cycles of witr. Here it says before the battle of Al-Harra. So they're saying this is a long time ago. This is during the time of the beginning. This is when Yazid ibn Muawiyah just became the Khalifa, and people were not happy about it. They said, why do we, okay, Muawiyah, you were Sahabi, used to write down the revelation for the Prophet ﷺ, no problems. But why should this hereditary rule start, and why should we have somebody who's not a righteous man leading us? It doesn't make no sense. So they had lots of rebellion from different sides. So this was in Medina, they had a rebellion, and there was a battle of Al-Harra. So before that political change, people used to pray 41 cycles of prayer and 5 cycles of witr. So this is in the presence of Umar Abdul Aziz, people used to pray 15 times 2 cycles. So that's 30 rak'ahs of prayer in the presence of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So that's again in that time. So when we say Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, is two periods. There's the time when he was the governor of Medina, okay? And there's a time when he was the Khalifa, right? I don't know, did he move to Damascus? I'm not sure what happened. But he was originally the governor of Medina. So we see, for example, him being referred to by the Khalifa, Marwan ibn Hakam, coming to him and asking him questions. And the picture we have of him in the Muwatta particularly is that he's a righteous man and a knowledgeable man, right? And that's in reality was the case. Right? People used to pray 15. We just did that hadith, the same one, right? In the main mosque, I'm not sure where this is. I believe this is in Kufa. Before the crisis of Ibn al-Ash'ath, Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr, Sa'id ibn al-Hasan, and Imran al-Abdi used to pray 5 times 40 cycles of prayer, meaning 20 rak'ahs. When it was the last 10 days, they added 1, i.e., 6 times 4 rak'ahs. They would finish the Quran twice in Ramadan. Abu Mijlis would lead them in 4 times 4 cycles of prayer, so 16, and finish a seventh of the Quran each night. So every week he's finishing a khatam. I saw Zurara ibn Awfa praying in the neighborhood mosque during Ramadan. He would pray 6 times 4, so 24 rak'ahs of prayers, and then 7 times 4 in the end of Ramadan. Ja'far ibn Sulaiman, the ruler, asked Imam Malik permission to reduce the prayer in Ramadan, and he forbade him to do so. He was asked if he disliked it, and he said yes. People have been doing this for a long time. He was asked how many cycles of prayer, and he replied, along with witr, 39, i.e. 36 plus 3. There's a copy there. Imam al-Shafi'i, he said, I used to see people in Medina praying 39 cycles of prayer and the people of Mecca praying 20. So this is what Imam Shafi saw. So Imam Shafi is born at year 150 and dies 204. So let's say, for example, he's 15, right? He's in Medina, in Mecca, for example, or in Medina. So he's in his 50, like he's a young man at that time. He's seeing people in the year 150, 160, 170, you know, praying like this. This is what they do. Ibn Rahaway, this is a Mujtahid Imam. He says, we prefer the 41 cycles of prayer according to Ubay ibn Ka'b used to pray. So he prefers this. He says, Ubay ibn Ka'b was put there by Sayyidina Umar. Sayyidina Umar is not a legislator, but like nigh legislator. And so he's been put there. We should pray 41 rak'ahs of Tarawih. Right? And so this is a really important book. Tirmidhi, right? Hadith book. Like, so if you read Hadith Tirmidhi, no one is talking about 8 rak'ahs at all. No one's talking about that. I mean, how many 8 rak'ahs have we even seen? And so I'm not a scholar, right? I'm not a scholar, but I do know things. And you know, you're gonna have to dig pretty far to find 8 rak'ahs somewhere. And I've given you the 8 rak'ahs sources. Imam Malik notes 8 rak'ahs. We saw that right in the beginning. But how many of the many quotes? I don't know how many slides we went through. How many of them mention 8? Right? You pick up, you know, Abdul Razzaq Sanani. Nobody's saying 8. Right? You pick up Tirmidhi. Nobody's saying 8. It doesn't exist. Right? So do the statistics. What percent of the Salaf or the early Muslims, the Sahaba and Tabi'een, prayed 8 rak'ahs? I don't know. Let's just hazard a guess. Let's say there's a whole bunch of information we don't have. Let's say it's 10%. Because as far as I know, we don't have any other evidence there. Basically, everybody is praying 20 or more. We saw 116, but everybody's praying 20 or more. There's certainly nobody is coming along saying this is a bid'ah, this is wrong. Why are you praying more than this? Everybody, these are early people. These are the students of the Sahaba and the Sahaba themselves. They are all praying 20 or more. They're not praying 8. So even if you don't want to follow madhab, I don't care about madhabs. Madhabs are made up by random people, made up by people who don't want to think. Okay. But how is it possible that the Sahaba and the Tabi'een misunderstood Tarawih? How is it possible? Like there's too many people here. There's too many people that you're quoting. They all, and it's not that they're from one camp. I can understand one group does this, another group does that. But if everybody's doing it, and it's Mecca and it's Medina and it's here, is that like what does that mean? And then it should be no surprise whatsoever that you say, oh, you what did the former Dahib say? 20 rakahs. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. It shouldn't be, it's no surprise. If you only see the hadith in Bukhari, of course you're going to be surprised. But otherwise, it's a no-brainer. Could you ask the question, what percent of the Salaf prayed this? And I remember I mentioned this specifically in the masjid, and I don't like to do these talks in the masjid anymore. It's not useful. People in the masjid need other things. There's other way more priorities that they need. But I said, لم يقل به إلا شرذمة قليلون. Someone got upset, like, because in his mind, like only a very few people have said that. Have said that's 8. And the person got his mind, why? Because he's been indoctrinated. It is an indoctrination, and it is blind taqleed that Sheikh so and so is saying 8 rakahs and we do 8 rakahs and the Prophet only prayed 8 rakahs. They just keep repeating the same fact again and again and again and again and again. But did they show you everything here? Right? And we don't want to make a comparison between kuffar and Muslims, right? And we don't want to say bad things about good people because people who say pray 8, they are good people. They're people who want people to follow the sunnah. But there's a genuine analogy that I see at least is of the church and the Roman Catholic Church and the way things are presented. It's like they didn't show you all the facts, did they? They didn't show you all the facts. So you show me the hadith, but you didn't show me all these quotes. And so I've been fairly, I haven't been selective. I didn't cut out things that I cut out repetition sometimes because it wasn't useful, right? It wasn't useful. So and so writes the same hadith. Someone's like, okay, fine. And I've doubled up here and there, but I've given you a picture. Here we go. I'm not trying to promote Shafi'i or this or that. I don't really care if you follow madhab or not. I just want people to see the picture as it is. If you're happy praying 8 because that's what the Prophet ﷺ did, and he probably did do, or maybe he didn't do, we don't know. That's fine. But at least you know the picture. At least you have a full picture of what's going on here.
Can I ask a quick question?
Bismillah, go ahead, Sham.
Just so I understand, I mean, mashallah, I feel like you're being very generous. But when you say things like the people who say that you just follow the sunnah, how can there seems to be a disconnect for me? How can someone say that they're following the sunnah when there's no sunnah of 8 rakah?
Exactly. Salafiyya la salafa laha.
Yeah.
It is exactly that. It's a Salafi mentality. There is no Salaf for what you're saying. Right? So the way they work is the following. What they do is they cut out evidence. So if you say, it's a bit like Quraniyun, like Salafism and Quraniyun is exactly the same process. And in fact, many Salafis do become Quraniyun people. So, anybody who is frustrated with the system, they start cutting things out of the system. Like, I don't care about all of these people. They don't exist. So what they do is they ignore certain things. And so if you say, for example, I'm only interested in Sahih Hadith, then there's only one Sahih Hadith. There we are. But your search, here's the problem, is your research methods does not reflect the same research methods of the Imams. So now you have a new deen. That's what it is. And in reality, we can apply exactly the same thing. This discussion in reality is exactly the same thing as hijab. Very easy. I can give a presentation tomorrow why the hijab is not obligatory for exactly the same reason. What does it say in the Quran? How crystal clear is that? It's not crystal clear at all. It's not crystal clear at all. And so then you have that, and then you have a weak hadith in Abu Dawood, in which the Prophet ﷺ tells Asma bint Abi Bakr that, when a woman reaches puberty, she has to cover this and this, and he point everything apart from this and this and pointed to his hands and face. It's a weak hadith. So what hadith do you have? So in reality, the hijab and 90% of the deen is based on how the forefathers, the Salaf, understand the deen. And the four madhabs codified the Salaf and created the four madhabs. You now come along with an axe and start cutting down this tree with various different methodologies that aren't actually part of the same system. You say, for example, you say, I want to only Sahih Hadith, no bid'ah, no this, no this, no this, and then you come up with a deen that doesn't exist, and it becomes self-destructive. That's exactly what it's about, right? It is supposed to be self-destructive. So there's a big difference between, like, someone who's Salafi, like, I'm Salafi because I don't want to be Hanafi. And say, okay, that's not really Salafi, then, is it? But this whole methodology is just like off. It's just off. And the crime is not freedom of thought. The crime is spreading bad freedom of thought for people who aren't able to think. So I'm a wacky person. I have cancer, and I say, "Oh, to hell with chemotherapy. I'm doing lemon juice." That I'm allowed to do that. I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want with my own life. But now I put it on YouTube, and I have followers, and I have oil money supporting this, and then everybody's going doing lemon juice and say, "Yeah, chemotherapy is just a ripoff," right? It's like that's not fair for the person who is not able to make that decision. You, Sham, for example, don't have access to these books. That's not fair. It's not fair. And so what they should say is 99.9% of the ummah disagree with me, but my opinion is this. That's the sentence that should to be prefixed to every single time they speak. 99% of the ummah say this, but I say this. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf said that once. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf made a statement, and he said, what I'm about to say is not traditional Islam, but so he didn't play with his he said something like, what I'm saying is not, this is not what normal people would say. And so that now, if you're listening carefully, he has freed himself of responsibility. Otherwise, hey, I'm an English speaking Muslim. I'm listening to somebody who seems reasonable. Here's Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. Everything you say is deen. That's the responsibility your words carry. You look like you're a Quran reciter. You are the religion. You prayed 8 rakats. That's what it is. You quote Sahih Bukhari. End of story. But you didn't tell me that actually 95% of the Salaf prayed did something else. And this, and so this is a whole methodology that can just destroy things. And it's not fair. Not fair for the guy on the street. Again, like, I'm Salafi. What does it mean? It means, like, I aspire to following the Salaf. I don't care what the late scholars do, but I see that the late scholars' understanding is a representation of the Salaf and does tidy it together and does put it in a systematic way. And you cannot learn, like, you cannot understand the Salaf without the Khalaf, without the later scholars. And so I see it as one system. It's one system. They see it as basically the Ummah dropped the ball on us a long time ago, and we're gonna have to pick up the pieces again, right? And then this is the problem, is like, you're not even somebody who's not even Salafi, like, and you're not even tired. Like, it's not that you're tired. It's just, I went to the masjid and they just, we just leave the masjid at 8. Why? I don't know. I've just heard enough people say it's 8 and it's not 20, and that's it. I didn't even study or anything. I didn't even listen to the recording that somebody was going to put out. And so that's just an injustice, right? It's just an injustice. Because it wasn't that you empowered people. You just told them something and told them, hey, swallow this, and they just did. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakum khair. Okay. So then we have, so that's why the four schools, it's no surprise that the four schools say 20 rakats. So now here's a question. The four schools, that begins, right? Well, it doesn't really begin, but starts to begin, 1,200 years ago. Over the last 1,200 years, what percent of the scholars have disagreed? Because the scholars, we understand, is they are not just blindly following the four schools. They are initiates of that school. They are colleagues of that school. So have any of these colleagues ever disagreed? Right? So again, if you start with doing statistics, let's imagine, for example, the Maliki scholars are like 10,000 scholars. Okay? The Maliki scholars are like 10,000 scholars. So what percent of these 10,000 scholars have disagreed? Okay, so we find Al-Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, right? Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, a huge Andalusian scholar. He has a commentary, he has a tafsir, and he has a commentary on Tirmidhi and on the Muwatta Imam Malik. Huge scholar, amazing scholar. He said the Prophet ﷺ only prayed 11, 8 rakahs. We should only pray 8 rakahs. Period. Khalas. End of story. Okay, so could he be right? He could be right. It's possible. But he's just one of how many? And you'll find other quotes in the Maliki school, people mentioning 8 here and there. You'll see things. It's not mashhur, it's not the relied upon position. But let's do it. Let's say of that 10,000 scholars, let's say 5. Right? What percent? Let's say there's 5 scholars that said that. So what's 5 out of 10,000? What percent is that? I mean, that's not a percentage, is it? So 100 out of 10,000 would be 1%, right? So we're talking about, a 20th of a percent, or a very small number. Negligible. Jazakum khair. So this is the key thing, is you can say whatever you want. You can say, I am about to give you a fatwa that is given by a negligible amount of scholars. Now my dhimma, my responsibility is free, as opposed to, oh, this is the correct, and I'm going to quote Qadi Abu Bakr al-Arabi. Ibn al-Humam of the Hanafis, he said, because the Hanafis, they say that Tarawih is sunnah mu'akkada, meaning you actually have to pray it. Like you can't just miss it on a regular basis. So he said, why are we saying that it's sunnah mu'akkada and you can't miss it when the Prophet only prayed 8? Surely it is sunnah to pray 20 and the 8 have to be sunnah mu'akkada. Like how could you be sinful if the Prophet didn't do it? That doesn't make any sense. So he said, I object to the idea that the 20 rak'ahs are sunnah mu'akkada, that the 20 rak'ahs have to be prayed. I hold that only the 8 have to be prayed, and the other 12, that's sunnah. Right? So you're doing something good by praying the rest, but it's not, Ibn Taymiyyah, following his normal style of looking at masalih, right, which is a welcomed approach, on many levels, but again within the remit style, he says, listen, Tarawih is something there for the people, right? You have an imam and he's leading the people. You need to look at what people are doing. Are people really religious? Not very religious? How long are they going to be there for? He said you should pray however many rak'ahs people want to do. So keep it at 2 rak'ahs, for example. Keep it short, keep it at 2 rak'ahs. Put it as 40 because people want to pray all night. Whatever you want to do, there's no fixed amount. Just judge what is the maslahah, right? What is the benefit there? So when we look at heritage, are we going to be a traditionalist? You say the 4 madhahib, whatever. So I'm going to ask a question. What is the mashhur in the Maliki school? What is relied upon position in the Shafi school? Trusting that there's a lot of research has been done and it does actually represent the Quran and Sunnah. Or am I going to revisionist, say I don't trust any of this stuff, it's all a bunch of nonsense. Right? Conclusion, be silent. Accept pluralism, but make sure you follow the majority. Make sure that what you do reflects, the majority, right? If there's 2 opinions in the deen, thousands of scholars have said one thing and thousands of scholars have said something else, that's fine, not a problem. Not an issue, it's okay. You can follow this. But when 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10, even 100 out of thousands, it becomes a negligible percentage, and you are playing Russian roulette with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's not a clever game to play with him. Inshallah. Any questions or queries? Amin, were you able to follow? Sister Aisha? There's some names I recognize and some names I don't. So,
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Amin.
Yeah, very well explained. So Jazakallah khair. It's, especially the framework in the beginning, it's very helpful. So yeah, no questions, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakumullah khair. Mustafa, makes sense? It's all clear? I'm not sure what time when you joined, Mustafa.
Yeah, it makes sense. But since Tarawih is like a Sunnah prayer, have scholars also debated amongst other Sunnah prayers as well?
Yeah, of course. There's a, so of course, yeah, everything. So a lot of these are debated. So there's countless things. For example, a key discussion, for example, between the Shafi'is and Hanbalis versus the Malikis and Hanafis. The 2 rakats before Fajr, should they be prayed? Um, should they be prayed even if the Jama'ah is happening, right? Duha, is it part of Ishraq or is it not? Can you pray? For example, Duha qada'an? Can you make up Duha? Can you make it up when the sun is rising? Could you make it up when the sun is at zenith? And a million things. Yeah, because basically there are certain things that are crystal clear, and many things are not crystal clear. So therefore, we're gonna have debate, and that's normal. But the issue is, what if they all agree on something, right? So I'll give you an example. I was once praying with somebody of this inclination, okay, that we described, a revisionist. So I went to the bathroom to make wudu, and I came back, and I hadn't been that quick. So I asked him, it was Asr. I said, "Oh, did you pray the sunnahs?" He said, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, you were waiting. Like, why didn't you do that?" Right? And obviously, he's not obliged to pray the sunnahs, but I mean, just I asked him, why didn't you do that? He said, "You shouldn't pray the sunnahs every day because then it will become fard." So the discussion is not whether he wants to pray the sunnahs or not. The discussion here is, are you saying that it's sunnah to miss a sunnah in order so that it doesn't become fard? Is that a concept? And then I asked that concept, if I research that concept and I find that concept is not found anywhere else, right? The Shafi'is, the Hanbalis, everybody will say, yeah, it's a good idea to pray those sunnahs, it's good. And nobody would recognize that logic. Then you have a problem, right? You have a problem. In the 20th century, there was a scholar, and he was saying, criticizing scrupulousness with meat and food. He said this is wrong. We should eat anything. The Prophet ﷺ, he ate meat from Jews and Christians and didn't ask any questions. And the Prophet ﷺ was given some cheese from some place, and it's quite likely to have like pork rennet, and he didn't ask a single question. So it is wrong to be scrupulous in food. And so, assuming perhaps he was talking to an audience that didn't need to be calmed down, whatever it is, but is that true or false? So halal and haram, I'm not talking about halal and haram food, right? Halal and haram food, that's a fiqh discussion. But I'm talking about scrupulous, right? Should you be scrupulous? For that, what does that mean? Scrupulous, like, is it a good idea to avoid buying things, let's say, for example, that sell to a certain country or that, or from a certain country? Is it, for example, a good idea to not buy from somebody, for example, because you don't know how ethical they work in their shop or how, or where their money's from? The answer is yes. That's called wara', that's called being scrupulous, and that is recommended in the most explicit terms from the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the former Madhahib. So you come along and criticize a concept that we all agree upon. That's a problem. That's a problem. Like, you have a fundamental problem. And so it's not an issue of do we agree or disagree, but you come along with a certain paradigm. So this is bid'ah. This idea of bid'ah. Bid'ah is a fundamental paradigm shift. You're looking at things the way that nobody else has looked at things before. And it's a huge problem. Does that make sense, Mustafa?
Yeah,
With that said, can we pray as much or as little as we are able to in our homes? Yeah, of course. So you want to pray 1,000,000 rak'ahs a day? Go ahead. So are you talking about Tarawih or are you just talking about Nafil Mutlaq? Oh, Tarawih. So I can only answer about the Shafi school. In the Shafi school, Tarawih would not be valid if you did that. You can't pray 22 rak'ahs of Tarawih. You can only pray 20 rak'ahs of Tarawih. You can pray less than that. You can just pray 2 or just 4, etc. It's all considered Tarawih. But you can't pray like 22 rak'ahs of Tarawih. You can't do that. So Imam Shafi'i, he said, only the people of Medina can do 36. So that's something specific to them. So I don't know about the other madhahib, right? Okay, inshallah, we'll
Assalamu
stop.
alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Is a question for
Sorry.
somebody?
Yeah. Regarding the last two questions, the one before, it's just a general question. If we don't have time, no problem. But as I said before, the framework and how you put it and how we understand the deen was very important to like what came afterwards. So I'm just asking in general, with your experience of like teaching and lecturing and so on and so forth, has this been a good way to convince people? Is there, what I'm asking is more or less, is there hope? Because
So what?
me myself,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I'll be brief. Myself, I was like I just grew up with A, and it's very clear cut, no problem. Like yeah, nothing else. And if you pray more, you're almost sinful. But just as you learn or as you start to understand more, as you said before, you only get part of the picture. So when you get a bigger portion of the picture or more puzzles, and you start seeing, it's not that obvious, or it's just plainly wrong. So back to the question, is there hope? Have you seen that people go back and think and actually change their mind when they see all this evidence and this way of thinking about understanding the deen?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. The way I'd answer it, basically, it is not the fault of the guy on the street that these ideas are widespread. It's not the fault. So it is the fault of the rulers. Okay, it's the fault of the rulers. So it is the job of the rulers to empower, to apply the Sharia and to empower scholars and to silence people who are not scholars. That is their job. So, um, so what we see basically is a product of politics. A product of politics is so, and people are the victims of those politics. So, so basically, because of politics, and because of fuel money and these kind of things, just like now, for example, it's going to be very common if somebody, I don't know how, brother, you're in Germany?
No, I'm in Scandinavia, so
Where in Scandinavia?
Norway.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so for example, in England, if you wanted to do a master's in Islamic studies, it's very easy to do a master's in Islamic studies if you're going to do Shi'i or Ismaili studies. There's lots of funding for it. So now suddenly, I wanted to study Deen, and so I go to university, and then I suddenly become Shi'i, right? How did that happen? Politics, right? So it's like it's all politics. There's a whole politics behind it. So the guy on the street is not responsible for these things. You turned out to be Shi'i because you grew up in Qom in Iran. You turned out to become Salafi or just confused because that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to do your best, right? But but anybody who's doing the best should be trying to learn, right? What should happen. Like, how did you come here? Is because maybe somebody shared this and somebody shared that, and then you want to listen, and then you hear something, say, okay. Um, so, but there are certain places and certain times, like the politicians team up with certain religious groups and they say, I will empower you and silence other people. And they will do that. Like in Russia, I don't know if it's still like that now. In Russia, it's hard for Sunnis to establish mosques in certain places, whereas it's easy for Shia to establish mosques because of good relations between Iran and Russia, etc. So, is there hope? There is hope. If so, but it's not. It doesn't really rest on the individual. It rests on the government. And so, yes, if the government is affected by the people as well. So there is hope, but I wouldn't look at it so pessimistically, right? I like somebody who is really somebody who is somebody the fact that somebody is discussing 20 or 8 means that they love Allah and they love His Messenger, and that's a good sign, right? Particularly if they avoid being rude, right? So let's look at Sheikh Albani rahimahullah. He wrote a book on Tarawih, and what he says in it is it should be 8 rak'ahs, and half of it he's reading the same books that we're reading. By the way, and which is kind of interesting. And he says, because he's being fair, he's like many of the Salaf prayed more than 8, and people should not tell people not to pray 8, but the Sunnah is to pray 8. People should not tell people not to pray more than 8. So his methodology is actually much more balanced than his students, right? So that's what you always find. So, so with knowledge, so what I'm trying to say is, when you find something like Sheikh Albani rahimahullah, those ideas should be kept to him. He should follow that opinion. Just if I want to follow a very fringe opinion, I should keep it to myself, and I should not widespread it. And it is the right of the average Muslim that those Muslims who are in power silence, right, people who have fringe opinions and give the microphone to people who have normal opinions. Just like Mansour is narrated to have told to Imam Malik, we all know there's some opinions that are a bit strict and some opinions that are a bit loose. Leave those out. Give us something that is balanced, right? That's the job. That's the job of the ruler. And so there is hope for Muslim leadership, and there is hope for Muslims themselves. But we do know as well that as we get closer and closer to the end of time, ignorance will become more and more and more. So we don't need to have hope. We can just have hope that the Prophet was speaking the truth as he was, and know that things are going to get worse. And that's okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the rest is up to Allah.
The rest is up to Allah. And there are some people as well, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, for many people, you're in Norway, what's a bigger issue, 8 or 20 rak'ahs? For example, I visited Norway. One of the things I noticed with Norwegian Muslims is they have a lot of awe and respect for Norwegian culture, more than in England. And so what's a bigger problem? I'm a Norwegian Muslim. A bigger problem, 8 or 20, or who am I? Like, who am I? That's a deep question. Am I a follower of Prophet Muhammad, or am I a follower of Norwegian culture? That's a huge discussion. That's a core thing. This is not core at all. This is secondary. This is like, so those are the big questions to have with the youth, with the elderly, people leaving the deen. I'm sure people leave the deen. Why would I become Muslim? Why would I be Muslim? It doesn't make any sense. And then you can't have Islamic schools either. So this is
that's a total balance.
the major thing. So like I am, I don't even give you the freedom. I'm in California. My kids were homeschooled, and then now that there's not even the state doesn't even fund it, nor does it even check. I can do whatever I want with my kids. Total freedom. Right? That's California. Whereas you're basically living in, the USSR. You're living in kind of like a Soviet Union. So it's so we have to make sure we have our fiqh al-awlawiyat, our priorities right. Did you have to go make enemies with those Salafi masjid for no reason? There's no need. No need. Go and pray in this masjid. You might even want to intentionally say, I'm going to go and pray in another masjid sometimes. And they say, oh, but they pray 8 and this pray 20. Go and pray in both. Because we don't need that now. This is an academic point. If you don't accept it, don't accept it. It's fine. Not a problem. Not a problem. Move on. But but we have to deal with what's the fiqh al-awlawiyat. Like, so last year, for example, I gave this talk in a masjid, and this year I said I'm not going to give it in a masjid. This is not appropriate for most people who are dealing with other things. It's not appropriate at all. Jazakumullah khair.
Yeah. One small question. Sorry. You said in the Shafi'i madhab, it has to be 20. No less,
Yes.
no more.
No, it can be less.
So,
But it can be less. So if you pray less, you're not praying Tarawih, basically.
yeah.
So you're
So,
not doing the whole thing. So that's like saying, for example, you can pray, for example, 8 rak'ahs of duha. Oh, I just prayed 2. Is that okay? Yeah. I mean, you didn't,
yeah.
you didn't do the
Yeah.
ideal, but you can't, so we have a debate, for example, in the Shafi school. Can you pray, is the maximum of duha 8 or is it 12? There's a debate, right? So now I'm going to pray 100 rak'ahs in the morning. That's called nafil mutlaq. Like you're just praying. That's fine. You can pray as long as it's not makruh time, you can pray as much as you want. But that's not called duha.
Tarawih.
Praying
And that's
tarawih,
all.
which is you do in a group prayer and you do it like this. Like, no, that's not tarawih. No, that's something else.
Yeah. So the hadith of Man Qama Ramadan, and is that specifically Tarawih or just general night prayer?
Just general. So anything. So that applies to
Okay.
anything from Maghrib till Fajr. So you prayed Maghrib plus 2 rak'ahs after Maghrib. Alhamdulillah. قمت Ramadan. You've done Ramadan. Sa'id al-Musayyib, right, the son-in-law of Abu Hurairah and the great Mufti of Medina, he said anybody who prays Isha in the masjid has got his portion of Laylatul Qadr. Like it's Laylatul Qadr, I have to go to work tomorrow. I have an exam. I have this, I have that. Khalas, you prayed the Isha in the masjid, alhamdulillah. And unfortunately, some people, they miss that. What do? Is they go to their friend's house for iftar. And then inshallah, so they say, inshallah, I'll catch like the last 8 rak'ahs of Tarawih. It's like you missed Isha though. Isha in the masjid is far more important than anything else, right? And praying the fard in the masjid is very important if you're free, if you're able to do it. Much more important than Tarawih, much more important than any sunnahs, much more important than anything else. So fiqh al-awlawiyat, understanding the priorities, what is agreed upon, right? These things are very important. Inshallah, we'll stop here.
Jazakallah khair.
So if a woman prays 8 rak'ahs Tarawih, but by herself, not in the masjid, would it be called Tarawih? It's called Tarawih, but you haven't prayed it all. So it's called not praying the whole of Tarawih in the Shafi school. So if you did 20, you've done the whole thing. So can I not pray Tarawih? Yeah, don't pray Tarawih for a reason, right? So 2 rak'ahs of Tarawih is Tarawih. 4 rak'ahs of Tarawih is Tarawih, but you haven't prayed the whole of Tarawih. So you've now missed out on a portion of what you should be doing. Just like if I didn't pray sunnahs, I've missed out on sunnahs. Right? But the fiqh point is I can't pray more than 20 because that's not called Tarawih. It is not, no. And it is not recommended for women to pray in congregation in the masjid. And Imam Shafi'i, and I believe Imam Malik as well. Imam Malik in the Maliki school, you can check with Wasim, that you should be praying the Hafiz, or somebody who's memorized some Quran, they should pray it at home. It's better, and that's a weak position in the Shafi school as well. Right? Is that if you memorize, if you're going to go home and recite Quran, you're not going to do Qul Huwallahu Ahad, 200 times, whatever. You're going to go and recite Quran. It's better to do it at home. You shouldn't pray in the masjid. Ibrahim an-Nakha'i, he told somebody, I think it's Ibrahim an-Nakha'i, I think it was him. He said, you're going to be a himar, jalakumullah, you're going to be a donkey sitting there listening to someone else recite. Like if you have something to recite, go home. The reason why there's a group prayer is because not everybody has memorized much Quran, so therefore they don't have a chance to do this. So anyway, but for women in general, if they can do a congregation at home, that is far superior, because by default, women should not go to the masjid. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop here. Inshallah. So Sister Olivia, if you just give me 5 minutes, inshallah, and then we can start the other class. Inshallah, we'll stop here. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.